Today, Charts Today comes to you from New York. I'm in downtown at the Statue of Liberty just over there. It's a glorious spring day here, and I'm just about to head into downtown for a series of meetings. But yes, so great to be back here in New York. I lived here for a while, and of course the center of financial markets. So let's get down and look at some charts. Well, I'm back at my desk in my room, and of course the taco trade is playing out, and we're seeing Brent crude just nudging $100, just at 99, despite that news of a continued ceasefire. What this really is doing is just pushing the war out longer, meaning the Straits of Hormuz will be closed for longer. So the market's mixed reaction to that, and certainly we're seeing crude oil not falling the way it has done on previous announcements, because the market's now realizing that this is going to be a longer term thing. And if we look further out the curve on crude oil, we are seeing now contracts that are further out starting to rise on the realization that this is going to be prolonged. So crude oil is bullish above the cloud on the 60-minute. We are effectively on the daily just waiting for this to play out. We've now got 90 as a low and 120. That's a $30 range. So we could say bearish below 90, which would be the below the cloud, or bullish above 120, which would then mean we start to look at big targets. If you like a hot war, we're now in kind of a scenario of a cold war, as we just see that blockade continuing. That's meant that markets have had a mixed reaction. We've got the S&P still nudging new highs. That was up yesterday, and the Nasdaq still holding on to its highs as well. So really quite remarkable that we are seeing new all-time highs in the markets. And if we look at the futures this morning, they are up. So they're up on that announcement of a continued ceasefire. Not so strong in Europe. We're seeing Europe just flat. So really uncertainty reigning there. And if we look at Japan, that's down 0.5%. Of course, energy crisis from the Middle East has a big impact on Japan. So the blockade continuing longer is not really good news for Japan. We're seeing the Hang Seng down over 1%. So looking bearish there as well. And if we look at the Sensex in India, also down 1%. So Asian markets and Australian down 1% as well. These markets not happy really about this continuing blockade in the Middle East, because Asia is probably the most affected region as a result of this. So really quite interesting to see that playing out. We are seeing soft commodities actually rising quite strongly on this. We're seeing cocoa is up. We're seeing coffee up 3.6%, finding support at that level, and even sugar, which has been making new lows, finding support at around $13.40. Looking at gold, we're sitting up just under 1% this morning. Looking at the short-term targets, we do have short-term downside targets, so it's hard to be really bullish about that with that struggling trend. And if we look at silver, we do have downside targets here on the daily chart, and on the 60-minute chart, we've got a downside target in train, and we are below the cloud. So that's quite interesting as well. A quick look at Bitcoin. That is actually pushing higher. We are on the verge of 3-month highs there. And looking at the 60-minute chart, again, the trend is up. We're above the cloud. So Bitcoin has seen some improvement. We have this situation where we're above the cloud on the price, but not on the lagging line. So we are mixed. And don't forget, you can watch those resource videos at Updater if you want to understand the clouds and how they work. You'll find that under the LSEG Masterclass. Look for the one on Ichimoku Clouds from December. If you're watching Charts Today from the Charts Today page, please do occasionally go to YouTube, like and subscribe there as well, and I welcome any comments. And if you want to understand the targets, do look at the videos. I do post videos here. There's a 90-minute video on top tips of understanding how price targets work. That was produced last week in London, and that's well worth a watch too if you just want to understand these resources. And of course, the targets are on TradingView as well, so you can use them there, and on Bloomberg, of course. And I'm in the US at the moment discussing the targets going on many more platforms, so they are going to become more and more widely used. So looking at stocks, we still have a position where none of the US Mag 7 are actually making new all-time highs. Amazon is the closest to making a new high. We've got Apple, of course. There's been news flow there with a new chief executive coming in, but that's certainly nowhere near making a new high. Nvidia down 1% yesterday, and so not making a new high here. And given that these the Mag 7 accounts for such a huge amount of the NASDAQ 100, you'd have to ask yourself, so what is driving the NASDAQ higher? And really, we can just go to the stocks and we can see that it's a lot of second order technology. This is Seagate, producer of drives, big upside target there. We've got AMD. They're also, we're seeing that there, new highs clearly there. Western Digital, the best performer so far this year on relative strength terms. If you watch my video on relative strength, produced last week for LSEG, this was the top performer in the NASDAQ 100. So that is really what is driving prices higher there. And if we look at the Dow Jones, we can see yesterday there was quite a lot of red on the screen. The markets really didn't get that Trump announcement until after the close, but we are seeing here the best performers, United Healthcare, but the trend isn't great there. Merck actually the worst performer yesterday. Interestingly, I was having dinner with a friend of mine who works 20 years at Merck, and we were commenting on how the share price has done over the last several months. But interestingly, even though we've got these upside targets, we're failing there at a lower high and then a lower low, so we do take that into account. If we look at the 60-minute chart, no clear targets, but that's interesting that we're seeing that. But many more stocks were down than up yesterday. Walmart, that has been a top performer over the last year, and we seem to be now back, having found cloud support, we're back in train there. And if we look at IBM, we're seeing here potential for this upside target to be activated as well, and so that's really quite key. But you can see we had a lot of stocks down. I mean, stocks like Goldman Sachs down 1.6%, but still above the cloud, looking pretty good all round there. And of course, you can do this in your trading view, so you can just literally list your Dow Jones companies and you can go and click on each one and see the targets for yourself here. So really quite an interesting mixed picture there. Caterpillar, a real standout. Look at that, multiple upside targets looking pretty strong. These buying thrusts have produced these targets, and so do keep an eye on that. If you want a trial of these targets on your trading view, just go to the Updater website and you can actually just get a trial of the targets there on TradingView, and more people using them on multiple platforms, so really quite powerful there. Last of all, let's have a quick look at the UK market. So interestingly, again, it's just a case of going to where are the top performers. Bunzl's the top performer this morning, up 3.6%. Interestingly, we've got an upside target. We've been in a downtrend. We've crossed into an uptrend through the cloud. So that is quite interesting that sometimes this just highlights the best performances. Next is National Grid, not so clear there. BP, of course, has been a beneficiary of the Iran conflict. And if we look at Glencore, just waiting to see if we can activate this upside target, one of the top performers on relative strength terms so far this year. Rio, another commodity stock, having hit the previous high, just not quite make it. We just nudged a new high intraday, but again, no clear targets there. Go to the 60-minute chart, and we are waiting to see whether we activate those upside targets. So that's the picture. The key thing is markets are holding strength on this news in the Middle East. So we're just got to wait and see how this plays out. Until tomorrow, have a great day. Happy charting. Bye for now.